Remember the 50s era American dream of a husband and wife with 2.5 kids, a dog, and a house with a white picket fence? While this is old school ideal still influences our choices to some degree, millennials are smashing and reshaping them to establish new norms. Coming up, we'll talk about how millennials are shifting societal expectations and setting a new standard. The I Wish You Knew Cafe is open. By now, millennials are all grown up. The youngest members of our generation are finishing undergrad, and the oldest are already planning for their second kid. We're at a point where no longer wishing for a change. We are the change. We're the lawmakers, the voters, the CEOs, and the parents with the power to create a world in which we want to live. And we've proven that we can make these changes. Before we get into it, let's meet our panel.
Hi, Christina.
I'm Philip.
Maya.
I'm Lawrence.
I'm Kiara.
And I'm Letitia. What are some social institution norms and expectations that millennials have preserved, shifted, or totally blown up? And who created them anyway?
Kids.
Yeah.
No, I was jumping in straight to it because I remember, I would hear stories about people from previous generations. Like my mom, for example, she would tell me about how much pressure she was under to, have a kid. And it was just a bunch of pressure. Have a kid. I want my grandbabies. I want this. Come on, bring them to me. I want my grandbabies and all of that. That was how my grandma. My mom was like, nah. And she really had a lot of pushback to be able to live her life and to do as much as she did before she had me. So I feel like what I've seen more with our generation is we could wait. Our generation is more known to pushing kids off until maybe 30, 35 once they accomplished all of their goals. Which is why at times I see some parents a little happier. You know what I mean? Some parents from our generation a little happier from previous generations, because in previous generations, my mom's always told me she has friends that ask themselves, what if? What if I waited? What if I took my time? What if I had kids when I was ready to have kids? Down to even the person who they had kids with might have changed. So that's a societal norm that we break, and it's not that much pressure to have kids at all anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of our parents grew up with their children, so that even the dynamic of the relationship that we have with our parents is a little bit different.
It's different, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of kids, also like how kids were able to send them off into society. So it used to be they used to place till the street lights go on. Then it was like, oh, we need to have control of our kids so we don't trust anybody around them. But I think I was telling Philip or one of you guys the other day, 10, 20 years ago, there's no way you could have told a parent when their kid turned 16, rather than buying them a car, you would be paying a stranger to drive them around. And AKA Uber. Like you would have never thought that people would trust other people with their kids. Like I know that's a big epidemic now where technology is also shifting how we parent our children, where we're like, I prefer you going into a stranger's car and paying them than getting your own car, because we don't want you drinking and driving. We don't want you.
We can track it.
And we can track it and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, college is another one. It's like, is it a necessity anymore? It's like such a big expense. It's like, can you get into your field of choice, your career field of choice without it? Obviously, if you can, then, more power to you.
And it's also just why we go to college in the first place. Like, maybe in the previous generation, they went and the priority of them going to college was to get that education, do what you got to do. Nowadays, the college experience is more of like a coming to age. That's where you really grow. That's where you really learn your lessons that you gotta know. You could go to school for 2 years and realize this isn't what I want to do. Leave school and be extremely successful. It's multiple stories of this.
Right, and to bring it back to what we were saying as far as who is, I feel like each generation is responsible for, placing those stigmas on each generation that comes after us. So meaning, what I mean by that is every generation that comes, it's always the previous generation hating on the younger generation. I feel as though it's never going to change because times always change. But time also recycles. It's history also repeats itself as well.
That's a fact.
I just think it's each individual, as far as breaking society expectations, is about being an individual, because each generation is always gonna blame the one before them, and
So what about our generation is very, very big on globalization. And that's one big shift that's happening for millennials is we're globalized, we're connected. And I guess I would like to hear from you guys. How do you think, so what are the things that globalization has done for our society?
I love globalization because it's allowed us to accept other cultures, and it's allowed us to accept other viewpoints, to accept other ideas, because we're around them more. So a lot of times previous generations, they wouldn't fully understand something because they weren't around it, or they didn't have any access to it. With our generation, with social media, with the internet as prevalent as it is today, we're actually able to be around more, and we're able to see more, and globalization does that. But another thing that it does too is globalization kind of eases some types of awkwardness that would happen between different generations and bridge the gap.
In different cultures.
A negative thing about it though is we're everybody somewhat losing individual culture, because all culture is kind of going in the melting pot and going into one. So back in the day, how we have folk stories, and we used to go back and we used to tell about the man on the train or the man on the horse and stuff like that, like those folk stories that honestly, they even originated from Africa at one point. We're kind of losing that.
To your point, it's like the thing is like you said, like to the detriment of society. The downside of globalization is that you do lose certain aspects of diversity, right? So you hear about languages disappearing, culture disappearing because everyone's trying to assimilate. Everyone's trying to be like other people. It's like it's a loss of individuality.
Absolutely.
What about bringing unity? So then there's even a flip side to that. So there's a negative side to that, but then the positive flip side to that is if you say we all come from one place, and let's say we all come from Africa is one theory, then what if globalization is bringing us the whole race back together?
Right.
It's a theory. So there's all these different theories that are going around where it's.
And globally, millennials are breaking barriers. Like, we really don't give a, we don't care.
I think that's one of the truths.
I think I hate to be devil's advocate because I don't want to, I know we're pushing things and we are reinventing certain things, but we can't forget the people that came before us, because in a sense, they put something in place and sparked something in us to allow us to do these things. So I don't want us to forget that, we had some inspiration before we had the inspiration. If you
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think
Hold that thought real quick. We've got to go to a break. Stay with us on I Wish You Knew. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to I Wish You Knew. Let's pick up where we left off. Phil, you had a good point.
He was about to make.
We've been waiting for it.
You had something.
Basically, I was just gonna say, I think we always have to acknowledge the previous generations, because I think it's natural for us to set our standards and our expectations based on what has already been, what we've already seen, what we grew up, what inspired us. So I think it's important to acknowledge the, past generations that are still around, that are we aren't the only lawmakers and people voting. There's still people that we're having to have these ongoing conversations with, and soon enough we'll be that past generation. So it's what marks are we looking to leave, and we're looking to leave hopefully a more positive impression than. I don't know.
But it's like my mom says, though. There's nothing new under the sun.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the fact that we took some spice and put a little spice in our life, and the next generation will take that same spice and redevelop it and reinvent it and redo something to the point where it's like, oh my God, this is so great. But it had to start somewhere.
But also, one thing that I really, really realized is that our generation looks at the previous generation for inspiration, of course we do that, but we also look at them like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a real big deal. We'll see something that, you know, maybe your parents did or uncle did or your aunt did back in the day, and you like, that's nothing I want to do. That's nothing I want to be a
So
part
if I
of.
don't know what I want, I know what I don't want.
Exactly.
What you're saying about what
That's
not
a
to do,
huge
that's
thing.
a lot of how I've learned. Growing up in an abusive household, I had to learn what not to do because I wasn't given that. But you know, kind of to switch gears. Didn't mean to get off topic. But you know, it ties into you know learning. You can learn what not to do by watching people and their failures. Or
I think I agree with you, and I think our millennial
100%.
generation is the last gap or disconnected from their parents. I think we're going to be closer to our kids, and our kids are going to be even closer to their grandkids moving forward because of technology and because of the economy. And because of globalization, and because we're living longer, so we're staying younger longer. There's a lot of things. There's 40 and 50-year-olds that I know now that they feel like they're 20-year-olds, 30s, and what is it? The new 40s.
Millennials don't care about
looking
approval
for
at
our
all.
kids to teach us.
Yeah,
like,
we
you
will.
know, we'll probably be really like, yo,
when you,
like,
the great part about what you said is that we're looking for our children to teach us instead of saying, you will never be my age. You will never know as much as I know. You know, so
Right. And
like,
I did get a
that's
lot
a
of
big
that
difference.
from my
that's the
from my
paradigm
people.
shift
Yeah, that's
there as
true.
well.
That's
But I
true.
want to go back to what you said because what you said is so important because I just said this not too long ago. I honestly said that I feel like, and no offense, but I feel like we're the last of the dying breed when it comes to, like you said, that disconnect, well, that connection to how our parents grew up, you know, from some time ago. Because I know growing up, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a phone until I got to high school.
Same.
So I remember having to come inside when the street lights came on. I remember we had to play outside. We couldn't come inside. Once you came inside, you had to stay inside. If you was outside, you had to stay outside. So it's like nowadays you have kids who are, you know, on their phones every single day. They have technology. They're growing up in technology. So, you know, I feel like we kind of had that connection to how they lived before, you know, for the kids
And our
now.
parents
So
had
it's,
towards us.
that's really
But-
important.
but
And
let's-
kind of to switch gears real quick, what do you guys think about the age restrictions that society puts on us? Because I know for me, you know, being a singer.
How much time do we have?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a
Well-
big
Yeah,
topic. That's like a pretty big.
Yeah, well, being a singer-songwriter, you know, I'm 29 years old. I just turned 29, and excuse me, I'll be damned if somebody tell me I can't put out a song and sing a song because I'm not 16. You know, first of all, I still get carded. Hello, you know what I'm saying? So no one's gonna tell me that I can't put out a song and put out a record. No one's gonna tell me that I can't chase my dream after a certain age. No one's gonna tell me or any other millennial what to do.
So I'm a singer as well, and I'm very familiar with the industry, and I can honestly say in the entertainment industry when it comes to music as well as modeling, that's changing. So I know a lot of the gigs that are coming on, like that are being presented, are looking for women between the ages of 28 and 45, and they're paying higher than they are for the younger, right? And then also with the music industry, you have access to your audience through technology, so you don't have to subscribe to anybody telling you no. You can just put it out there.
And
Exactly.
another really
subscribe to
important
that
area.
anymore.
Another really important area that's
Yeah.
like that's affected by
I
all
used to
that
think,
is like
oh,
is
I had a
politics.
couple more
Is
years
like
until I turn.
yo, like you have to be 18 to vote, right? But so many young people are affected by issues like that they can't vote on. I mean, and to me, that's a negative societal norm.
And then even with that, just in regards to like you were saying with the music industry, and you be damned if you let somebody say that your age could dictate your career. Back in the day, somebody chose if you were hot or not. Nowadays, you can make yourself
So
pop.
hot.
You can
It
make
was
yourself
middle
hot.
management. Somebody in a
Yeah.
position before you got to the executives had to sign you on and co-sign you.
Similar to
the market
self-love.
gets to
You choose
decide now.
yourself. You
Right.
choose.
2 Chainz
Nobody
popped
tells
at
you who you
36.
are. You tell the world who you
Yeah,
are.
right.
2 Chainz.
Nobody
Yeah.
tells you who you are.
2
you know?
Chainz popped at 36.
Right.
You still got like shows like America's Got Talent and other shows around that space that, you know, showcase different people and different talents. You see a 45, you see a 52-year-old go in there and kill it.
I know y'all remember, and he wasn't an artist or anything, but he was the Mr. Steal Your Grandma, like the guy that
Yeah,
popped
Mr.
up on
Steal
social
Your
media.
Grandma.
And he became this hot whatever. Now, if he had some kind of skill, he could have went and came out with an album and all that, and people would have bought it
Salt
and jumped on
Bae.
it. Yeah.
Salt Bay got skilled. I had
Salt
So
Bae.
that's,
Still gotta
that's
go to my
definitely a
main
societal
restaurant.
norm that is shifting, like how we look at things and
We
what
don't have
value.
those
Yeah.
middlemen anymore
Gotta
dictating who's
agree.
hot, who's not. So you don't got to worry about that no more.
So we have a question. We have a question. So we're talking about all the societal norms that we're smashing. So Stacey T. Holmes asks, how is this smashing norms? All generation pushed the envelope. What do you guys think about that?
Well, for one, millennials don't need any approval. It's a thin line between social media causing a need for validation, but it's also a thin line between, well, hold on. Social media causing a need for validation versus millennials caring about approval. And I think that millennials no longer, the typical millennial, like, we no longer care about approval anymore. We do what we want. We don't want anybody telling us what to do unless we ask for it. And, you know, we're kind of a little stubborn. You know what I mean? We've been through some stuff.
But we're talking about millennials, the generation that falls after us. They are coming into all that,
They're
so
gonna-
they're going to be.
They're gonna break
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back with I Wish You Knew. Welcome back to I Wish You Knew. All right, let's jump back into what we were talking about, societal norms and, you know, smashing expectations.
Yeah, Stacey had that question. But one thing I want to say is, to be honest with you, we could have a different episode of this every 15, 20 years. Because
Facts.
every generation is going to break a societal norm of the previous ones. That's why I'm like, this isn't a concept that's revolutionary. It's bound to happen with time, with different technology, with different experience. You think people back in the 1914s that was riding in Model T Fords all around are having the same experiences as us that's riding around in the Hondas and the Nissans and things of that nature? It's always going to be a change.
Like as
no
the
matter
world evolves, so do we, and so do each
everything is
generation.
always going to be an evolution, and we take the good things from previous generations, we leave the bad things from previous generations,
It's not a
and we just
competition.
continue to keep it moving. And that's the problem. Older generations look at our generation like it's a competition. Like, oh, why they getting that so quick? We didn't get it so quick. Why they didn't do this so fast? We didn't get it so fast. They got to work as hard as us. With technology, sometimes with certain situations, we don't have to work as hard, or we don't have to do as much. Yeah, the work still got to put in. You still got to put in that effort. You still got to have compassion, care, and persistence, of course. But the societal norms are always going to change, because with different technology, with different experience, with different entertainment platforms, with different outlets of expression, that's going to be a big
What
deal.
I want to add to that, the gap of how the duration, how long it takes, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Exactly.
It used to be decades. Well, first it was centuries, and it was decades. Now it's getting smaller, where every year, every second, things are changing quicker and quicker. The societal norms are changing. So to your point, when people are going to be like, why? Me, I know that I'm gonna try to keep it conscious as my kids are growing older, that I'm gonna acknowledge that and not do what older generations have done to our generation.
I'll be young
Because it's
forever
gonna
with my
change.
kids.
It's gonna change quicker and more rapidly.
Yeah, that brings that made me.
Forever young.
No, that reminds me of my younger brother, who's just 22 months younger than I am, when social media, not social media, when Snapchat came out, and I was like, really, another one? Like, you know, and I'm all working in my corporate job, like being all professional and stuff in life, and then he's like living, you know, and like all these different social medias and stuff. So I'm like, another one? Like, no, he's like, he said a very valuable point to me that kind of resonated, and it was like, Christina, stop making yourself older, or stop being old, or stop blocking. He's like, you're gonna miss the whole generation.
Okay, so now that we realize, like all of us are clearly breaking societal norms generation to generation, what societal norms have we broken?
Being open.
That's what I'm kind of like.
Transparency.
Transparency and
Being
being
open in
open with
what way?
our personal experiences and what things do to us.
Transparency.
There's never been a generation that's been more open about mental health. There's never been a generation that's been more open about sexual orientation. There's never been a generation that's been more open about the injustices that went on, because previous generations, and I'm not talking about the most previous generation, but other previous generations, we were taught how to embrace, they were taught how to embrace struggle or hold it in or keep that struggle in. With us, with the social media, with the different platforms we have to be open, we're more open with it. Like, nah, this ain't right. And we're not gonna hold this in. We gonna talk about it.
Like if the government says this is the welfare, you can't have a man in the household, so you don't have a man in the household, and you have the woman, you conform to what the ways of the world in that time is. You know, back in the day when my parents grew up, that was the welfare era where if a man was involved or a man was in the house, you didn't get certain benefits. And we're talking about you know, like people that depend on
they could use it, they need it.
Right. So you don't fight that. You just don't have a man in the home, or and there's
that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, that's a
about
whole
breaking up families, institutional stuff. But even a societal norm, I would also say our environment. So we're a generation that's really looking at the environment more and more and more.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Also, to kind of switch gears back to.
I'm sorry, but I was, you know, because I hear you guys and saying that we're more. I told y'all this before, and I hate to be the devil's advocate.
Go ahead.
She's the old lady.
Because, you know, I have an old.
She's the old lady.
I like that.
I have an old.
Talk to us. Give us that wisdom. Hold on.
I feel like we always forget that we have the opportunity to do so. And I just mentioned this to someone, I can't remember who I was talking to, but there was a point in time where the only form of communication they kind of had were newspapers and the television, in a sense, right? So if you read an article about something happening overseas, you're going to tell your family, you know, I'm not traveling, I can't do this. But you have an opportunity to go to Google, type in, did this really happen? Is this really true? Is this really going on everywhere? So it's like we have some form of security when it comes to also to social media and the internet. They didn't have that.
For me, like the takeaway is this: is like it doesn't have to mean that we don't, you know, look to past generations. It's just like the reliance that we put upon past generations is less and less. And I think we all realize that none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Exactly.
Obviously, there's new technology out every day, which changes the world every day, right? So,
great point.
You know what? And to your point, really quickly about this, I really think that we're going to get so young. Everybody's going to be focused on the youth. That we're going in the near future, we're going to get to the point where the workforce, we're going to have to bring back the older generation for wisdom, because people are going to we are actually getting a little out of control
wisdom and common
about
sense.
just being
that's needed.
so young. So I'm with you on that.
Another great point, guys. I would also like to, you know, switch gears back to what Stacey was saying, when she was asking about how millennials are smashing expectations, societal expectations. I wanted to shed light on certain companies, like marketing companies. They are one of the entities that are really helping to helping millennials as far as backing them with support. You know, usually in life, when you have support, you're more comfortable, you're more inclined to speak on something. So these marketing companies, they really know that millennials are, you know, the future. So what they do is they allow support, and they allow millennials to really be more open.
But we have
these marketing companies.
But we have to be careful on how we take that with marketing companies, because at the end of the day, the goal of the marketing company is to market a product. So sometimes that openness that they share and that environment that they create isn't exactly genuine, but it's put there for you to feel comfortable to buy this product. So we have to be very careful in regards to that aspect of it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news and be devil's advocate like you've been the show, but I got to take a little bit of cues from what you was doing, and I genuinely believe that. Like, I genuinely believe that. We have to be careful with how we allow companies and how we allow certain people to use our stories and to use our vision.
I agree with that. I think what we have to demand is that we have someone from our demographic, someone that we feel represents us within that company.
All right, guys.
But we also
on that note, we will get back to that conversation.
Ooh.
That's the time we have for now. Thanks for watching. I wish you knew. See you next time, guys.